Hello, everyone. Hello. We're going to begin our following workshop. We are esteemed to have the following speaker present as she visits us from the East Coast. And she is the Director of Partner Network Services with Feeding America National. She has 15 years of experience working in food banking and 3 since she's been recruited with Feeding America National, and is part of the team that has trained over 600 partner agency leaders nationally, with succession planning being one of the areas they specialize in. Please give a warm welcome to Desiree Dillon.
Now, I know succession planning is a boring topic and you don't want to hear about this today, but I promise you, I want to give you a good 40 minutes of information that will help you shift your mindset around something that can be intimidating, can be difficult, but very important, right? Dr. Yin, I'm sorry. I am glad that I don't have a PowerPoint presentation behind me because I'm working on about 6 PowerPoint presentations right now, and I am just excited and elated to be in this beautiful garden with you here today, to get out of that office, out of that screen, and to connect with you, right? So thank you for having me. So let's dig in, because I know I am the one standing in between you and lunch. So I don't want you to be mad at me. So I'm gonna just kind of get started. The beautiful thing about this topic and the work that we've done at Feeding America in our functional area is that we've created a training that's a train the trainer model for food banks to train their partner agencies on this topic. The bad news is it's a training that requires 2.5 hours. I don't have that today, but I do have 40 minutes. And what I want to do is make sure you may not have it with you now, but you will get, if you don't have it, a workbook that you will get some homework assignments to use on your own. And I want to encourage you and invite others to share that workbook with you and share the resource, because what I've learned is that peer-to-peer learning is the best learning. You can hear all these things from me standing up here talking to you, lecturing to you, but the best learning comes from the person that's sitting right next to you, right? So 2 goals for today is to get you in the right mindset to start thinking about succession planning. And the second goal is to give you with the right tools to get you started and take action on your succession plan, because it doesn't make sense if it's all written and beautiful and well put together, but you don't use it. You forget where it is. You put it on the shelf. So to encourage you to take action on your succession planning or revise your succession plan, if that's a goal for you, right? All right, so let's get started. Just a little bit of deeper background. You heard a little bit about my journey to Feeding America. I'm from Mississippi, born and raised. I started my journey in food banking in 2006 after Hurricane Katrina. I was there in that role for about 8 years. Then an opportunity presented itself for me to move to Dallas and work with North Texas Food Bank. Both of those experiences were around partner agencies. So I engaged with partner agencies that were faith-based, in the church closets. I engaged with partner agencies that had budgets in the millions and had paid staff, and those in between that were very impactful but had the right resources. But if one catastrophic thing happened, the organization could crumble. I want you to think about what position is your organization in right now? Are you to the left, faith-based church pantry, doing everything you can? Are you on the right with all the resources? Or are you in the middle with one disaster away? Just think about that for a moment. In your handout, you'll see on page 1 in this presentation a square with a yellow box. It says icebreaker. I want you to do 2 things in this yellow box. I want you to write down on the left side of the yellow box, visionary, and on the right side of the yellow box, I want you to write strategist. So 2 words I want you to write down in that yellow box. When you write those 2 words down, I want you to think of the first 3 words that come up in your mind when you think of a visionary. And then once you do that, I want you to think of the first 3 words that come to your mind when you think of a strategist. Raise your hand when you got your words written down. Are you still thinking? It's okay. This is a good exercise. Strategist, visionary, write down 3 words that come to your mind when you think of visionary. And they can be any words, but the first thing that comes to your mind. And 3 words when you think of strategist. And this is not an exercise in perfection, just the first thing that comes to your mind. Now, when you think of all of those words, raise your hand if you are a visionary. I want to see some hands. If you are a visionary, if you are the type of person that comes up with the vision, you go to sleep and you wake up envisioning people getting all the food that they need. Hunger is eradicated. We no longer need resources. Everybody's fed. Everybody has the needs. A visionary could also be a CEO, a president, a founder. If you're a founder of your organization, raise your hand. You're a founder. You're the originator of your organization. You created the mission. You drive the boat. My founders, raise your hand. Raise your hand if you are a strategist. You do the planning. You know everything down to the detail. That's your groove, right? You plan, you strategize, you delegate, you make things happen. How many of you are both? Very good. We're gonna I'm gonna make sure that you'll get a better understanding of why we did that exercise when I come back. Before we deep dive into the definition of succession planning, I want you to understand that in order to do this and do it right, you have to have both. For my founders out there, how many of you are afraid to let go of the wheel? How many of you are afraid to even think about succession planning? You're afraid that if you don't do it, it will not get done. Can I see some hands, hallelujahs out there? For today, and I understand that comes from founder syndrome. Because I can guarantee you, when you started that organization, when you developed the vision for what you wanted to do and the impact you wanted to make, you probably reached in your pocket, drained your bank account, you found a location, you recruited the volunteers, you put it all together. This is mine, right? And nobody else can do it like me. But what if something happened to you that pulled you away? The question that I have for you is, could the operation still run? If your answer is no, I want you to challenge yourself to shift your mindset today. I want you to think about succession planning from a partnership perspective, a relationship perspective, because you're all here today because you and the food bank are in partnership around the mission to feed people. Make sure that food insecurity is no more. So even though you've invested all that you've had for a long time, succession planning is not about you. It's about the mission. It's about the partnership. It's about the neighbors, first and foremost, that you serve, right? Succession planning aligns the visionaries and the strategists, right? To ensure that our organizations are sustainable and that the organization succeeds, not I succeed. Does everybody understand that? So it takes this kind of perspective before you dive in deep into succession and planning and who's up next, who I'm supposed to mentor and put in position in case something happens to me, right? That is the mindset. Sometimes as founders, we start gatekeeping. We limit access to information and resources. We have to shift that scarcity mindset, right? When we think about succession planning. So I want you to turn to page 2. And the question asks, what is succession planning? And I am going to read the definition because it is important. Succession planning is a process to prepare agencies for a smooth transition in planned or unplanned emergency changes, whether long-term or temporary. The practice, right, of strategic readiness is especially important for volunteer and founder-led agencies. And that is you. It is so important. I want you to turn to page 3. At the top, there's a big question. What is succession planning? And you see 2 graphics there. On the left, you see some words there in blocks. And you see successful and succession with the flip of those blocks. To the right, you also see a track team. I want you to think about, when you look at these two graphics, what comes up for you. I'm going to give you a minute to just kind of chat at your tables. When you see these two graphics, what comes up for you? Just a few minutes to chat at your table. What do you think about when you see these two graphics? All right. I need 2 volunteers just to tell me what's coming up for you when you see these 2 graphics or what was shared at your table. Just 2. Yes. You can't have one without the other, and also passing the baton. Very good. Yes. Your successor has to have what? A vision. What's that? The successor has to have the vision. Right? These are examples of what succession planning is. But we also need to get an understanding of what succession planning is not. It's not replacement focused, right? If I'm in an organization and I've identified my volunteers who are strategists or have visionary skills and strategic skills, putting them in a position doesn't mean that they're going to push me out. When we think of succession planning, sometimes, and this is specifically for founders, that you feel like you're being pushed out, and there's a fear there. Succession planning is not that. You're not being replaced. What succession planning can do is build your legacy in the mission. Okay? It's not to push you out, but to include your legacy in the mission that will live on long before you will. Okay? It's not reactive, it is proactive. So what that means is we have planned, right? How many of you were ready to shut down during COVID? Did you have a plan in place? How difficult was it to scramble? Right? It's not reactive, it is proactive. It is process focused, it is transition focused, and it is proactive. Succession planning is also inclusive. It helps you include those that have the skill sets that you might not have and invite them to the table to plan out the processes. Right? Why is it important? It helps us center how we serve our neighbors, how we will plan to address gaps and impacts if our neighbors aren't able to get food because there is an emergency, right? If it's an emergency with me and I have to shut down or not be at the pantry today, do I have my right-hand person that can kick in if something happens to me? If we have to shut down, neighbors don't get served. Agency viability. You're very relevant in what you do. It was evident during the pandemic that we could not shut down. We had to make sure that people continued to get fed and served during that crisis, right? So if we have plans and operations and safeguards in place, we can adjust and pivot and still keep the ball rolling, right? And number one, succession planning, it is just a strong basic business practice. I know firsthand, if you're a nonprofit organization, you have a tendency to think, well, I'm just faith-based. I don't have to have all these informal policies, procedures. Number one, I don't have time to do that. But it is a business practice. And it is an important business practice when it comes to partnering for the mission, right? You want to be credible, regardless if you are a church pantry, a nonprofit organization. You want to be credible, and you want to be in a position to be able to partner. So use it as a business practice and a tool in your toolbox to be ready when resources come, when partnerships come, right? So that's why succession planning is important in terms of context. Now, there are 6 components to succession planning, but today we're going to focus on 3, and that is defining the mission of your organization, defining and documenting roles and processes, assigning and documenting your contacts. Those are the first 3 major components that I want you to first focus on. The last 3, those are secondary, but you've got to get 1, 2, and 3 down pat first. Define the mission, define and document roles and processes, and assign and document your contacts. Recruitment and training is needed. You know, Daniel gave you all an amazing 30, 40-minute version on recruitment for volunteers. But you've got to get the foundations first. That's the planning process. Developing and continuity in leadership and evaluating and confirming the plan annually, those are secondary. But you've got to focus on these 3. Who can tell me the importance of documentation? I'll take another volunteer. What's that? Say that again. And again, and again, and again. I'm going to make y'all repeat that. Repeat after me. If it wasn't documented, one more time. If it wasn't documented, we forget. We forget from day to day, right? The things that we did. Because we've had to pivot so much. When volunteers call in and can't come, we pivot. We get it done, but we forget what happened. And when it happens again, we don't know what to do. And we go into what? Reactive mode, right? So documentation is important. And I will share with you, when you get your workbook, we have examples of documents that you need to keep. In that workbook, you'll also find examples of job descriptions so that you can identify the key roles that you need to consistently have in place and make sure that it's documented. So let's talk a little bit about those components. And if you're following me on page 5, and you'll see the question, what is your mission? I want you to engage in a little exercise for a couple of minutes. I want you to take a few minutes and read through these questions. What do we do? How do we do it? Who do we do it for? What value do we bring? What's most important to us? Why do we do what we do? Those are critical questions that if you have not written these down and you've got answers, responses to these questions, this is the first thing I want you to do. But I want you to take a moment and reflect. Out of these 6 questions, which ones do you not have an answer for? And if you don't have an answer for that question, this is an important opportunity, a real good opportunity to get your strategist voice in this exercise. If you can't answer it, maybe someone else can, right?